Welcome to LOA Today. Walt Thiessen and life coach Wendy Dillard here. Today is Monday, July the 9th, 2018, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, your second daily dose of happy for the day. And I am happy that I am inside doing a podcast because the sun is blazing down on the side of the house and I have a nice big curtain blocking it also. I'm nice and cool in the middle of a blazing hot sun. I like that.
And I can appreciate the fact that I have blaring cold air conditioning popping out of my vents, so I get to stay cool as well.
Blaring cold, wow.
Oh yeah, it's
like,
big time cold.
No halfway stuff here. I can tell you that. Whoa.
Oh no, it's like ice. It's like as the water, as the air comes out, it turns into ice cube chunks and lands on the floor.
That must get awful messy. I mean.
I roll around in it. What can I tell you? I like the cold.
Who needs a banana peel when you can slip on an ice cube? I tell you. All right. Well, hey, if that cools you down, that's fine with me. That's good. Main thing is to have fun with it. So, did you have a good weekend?
I did. I had a really nice weekend. I had a great call with my life coach friend Rhonda.
Oh, good.
And wow, we talked just shy of 4 hours.
Whoa.
Yeah, and the weekend before, I think we talked for 3. And it was interesting because as life coaches, we were both remarking on how valuable the amount of time we spent in one intensive session. And really, we weren't calling to do coaching with each other, although that's what we ended up doing. We really called just to kind of check in. Hey, what's up? And boom, we both launch into wherever we are in our process, because that's kind of what we do. And we're now calling ourselves power partners because we are.
Yeah.
And we powered through so much stuff. And the delight in my relationship with her is that I don't have to feel like, oh my gosh, I took up so much time with my stuff, because I know from being on the other side, when you're the one doing the coaching, there's as much insight and awareness going on, and it's like everything that's my issue mirrors her and her issues, and vice versa. So it's kind of like, it doesn't matter which one is bringing up something to work on, we're both getting what we need. And
very efficient.
I think we both came up with a new offering, which is, she said it's something she'd been thinking about, which is kind of doing a half-day VIP session where you do like a good number of hours all in one time slot. And I thought, I think I want to do that, because for people who are further along in their process, there's a really huge value in just cranking out a bunch of stuff at one time.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Versus someone who's newer in the process, it really requires less time, because we cover so many new topics and there's so much new information that over an hour it can be overwhelming. But for somebody who's pretty advanced in law of attraction, where you can hold on to, okay, I got that, let's go on to the next thing, it would have a real value. So that was just fun, and not to mention all of the incredible new insights that I had. And whoa, when I was done, I thought I had a bunch of time to do some other projects, but I got to tell you, energetically, what we worked on together just really hit me back. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to go anywhere. I'm just going to sit and watch TV and play solitaire.
So it sounds like it was a very successful session, that's for sure. I mean, does this mean that you're also going to be adding a new package, so to speak, to your coaching offering?
I probably will be.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'm still thinking on that, but it feels really good.
Very cool. That's nice. Yeah.
So how was your weekend?
Well, I've told the story a couple times now, but I can do the highlights of it again. Louise and I went to Middletown, Connecticut, where our friends Anne Marie and Mike are, and they invited us down for 4th of July fireworks, which were held on a Saturday this year instead of on the 4th on Wednesday. And it was a great show, and we had a great time. There was like a big picnic thing going on. They had a bunch of their volunteers there, so probably a dozen and a half people. But in the middle of the fireworks show, the barge caught on fire. The barge that is on the middle of the river where all the fireworks are going off. The barge caught on fire.
Oh my goodness!
It kind of ended the show. So like it was going really nicely, very intricate design, so forth, and poof, all of a sudden there's this big fire down there. So it's like, get your marshmallows on your sticks.
So was everybody able to get off safely?
Oh, they don't. That's not even an issue. All of these fireworks displays are computerized these days. So
Oh, so the
I don't
barge
think.
just handles the fireworks.
Yeah, I don't think there was anybody even on the barge. There might have been, but I doubt it. Because they just line everything up. Maybe there's somebody there who resets things. I'm not really sure, but I mean, there certainly wasn't a whole crew of people on there. There were a bunch of fireboats in the area, though. They were pouring water on it really quickly. Yeah, so it was exciting.
Well, I was going to say, I'm going to say something that could cause some listeners to go, "Oh my God, Wendy, I can't believe you even go there."
Okay.
But I'm a law of attraction expert, and I see everything through the lens of law of attraction.
I know that's kind of like it's like a career byproduct, right? The more we focus on this stuff, the more we're just really, really aware of it.
Well, and it's like I know that how I first started learning how law of attraction really worked in my life, because yes, there's the teaching aspect, but then there's the living of life, life experience component. And that's where you really start to make headway in the process of using deliberate creation. So I'm always in a state of curiosity. I'm never in a state of curiosity with judgment. That's not my purpose for what I'm saying, but curiosity for the state of learning and understanding. So in the situation that occurred that you experienced where the barge caught on fire, that doesn't happen arbitrarily. That's not a coincidence. That's not just a random act of oops. It's like there are energies, there are vibrational scenarios behind the scenes. And so those are the kinds of things that just as a matter of curiosity, I like to play with to kind of stretch my own muscles. Like what kinds of thoughts, which of course allude to feelings, could the people who were involved in putting this together and the audience have been focused on that could have caused such a thing?
Well, from my viewpoint, if you can unravel all the tendrils of that particular group of people, you're a better man than I am, Gunga Din.
Well, and I would never intend to unravel them all. I just like to use it as an exercise to come up with a couple.
Okay.
Because that stretches my own muscles in my own life.
So does it suggest anything to you?
Well, for example, okay, the idea of fire. So somebody could have been focused on fire. They could have seen a fire in their home. They could have seen wildfires on television. It could have caused them to be focusing on fire. It possibly, if they saw some footage of wildfires in a certain part of our country, because that's what happens during the drought season in July in the States, it could cause them to go in fear. Maybe they have an uncle or a firefighter person that they're really close to that got hurt in such an incident, and so it caused them to be in fear. That's just one thread that I just went down.
Okay.
You want to take it for a ride? I don't know. What kind of thoughts?
I really don't have a good idea.
The audience.
Yeah.
Any idea of what an audience person might have thought of?
Not really. The only thing I can contribute, and I can't make head or tail out of it, but I throw it out there just in case something occurs to you, is that not so much during it, but after the fact, looking back, it felt like a deja vu moment. Like I had experienced being at a fireworks display where the barge caught on fire, and the way I associated it was after the fire started, there were still some fireworks going off, but they were out of sequence. They were just firing because the fire was hitting the fuse or whatever, and so they were just kind of randomly going off. And I had this feeling like I had experienced that before, but I couldn't tell you when, and I can't remember any time where I've seen the barge caught on fire. So I don't really know where that comes from, and I have no idea how to tie it in.
Interesting. But the very fact that it felt like a deja vu experience. Now, here's something that I've heard Abraham say, and I think I've heard some other spiritual people talk about, that the concept of the experience of deja vu, this is what Abraham says, is that you have already lived it in your vibrational essence.
Okay.
And so you're experiencing it now, but it's kind of, when we are desiring something that hasn't happened yet, and we're so connected to the visualization, let's say, or the feeling of it, we feel as though it's happening because it feels that real to us. It's possible that, that you have experienced something that was so real to you, but it hadn't happened yet, and now it did. It could be something you experienced in your dreams.
It kind of makes me think I need to have a vortex clear out, like a tag sale. Get rid of the unwanted stuff.
Well, who said it's unwanted? Who's not to say that this experience is going to be something that is going to create a better, expansive, more safe scenario in the future?
Okay.
Everything that happens
I don't know.
is for our expansion. So I guess that was my way of saying I don't think that even if it was in your dreams, it's something that has to be cleared out. How did you feel while the barge was on fire?
I don't think I had any feeling at all. Slight feeling of disappointment because I knew that the fireworks display was basically going to collapse in the middle of it and just was going to stop. But I mean, I wasn't disappointed about because I'd enjoyed it. I was feeling good. So
okay,
And
you felt safe?
Oh God, yes. Well, first of all, we weren't very close anyway. We were up on a hill, but I didn't feel any kind of concern for anybody. I didn't feel like anybody's safety was in danger. So it was kind of like watching. It was like watching, I don't know, a newscast or something, but without the fear-based commentary on top of it.
Got it.
Like, oh my goodness, the barge is on fire. Look at that.
Well, we don't have to take this a whole lot further, but I was just using it as kind of an exercise to kind of mention to, listeners, or to kind of put a bug in your ear. Every situation that happens, you can use as an exercise to think about what kinds of thoughts and feelings could generate a certain kind of result. Because when it's not you in it, sometimes it's just easier because you're more objective.
Sometimes, yeah.
Sometimes.
I mean, I think I tend to be kind of selective about what events and incidents that happen in my life I focus on in that way. Because it's also very easy to create a whole bunch of rabbit holes and have no idea which ones are the real ones and which ones are things you just made up and which ones, it just becomes so convoluted that you can drive yourself crazy trying to unravel even a piece of it. So I say, well, okay, unless I feel like there's some real important tie that I need to know, I think I'll just let that one go.
Okay. Well, and I don't do it for figuring anything out.
Okay. So what do you do it for?
Exercise for stretching our imaginative muscles.
Oh.
Because when we really have something going on in our life and we're trying to figure out what it's about, that sometimes is the harder place to try to unravel the picture because you're so in it.
Okay.
So I like to use outside things that I'm not connected to at all to kind of play. Like as an example, when I was talking to Rhonda, she said she loves to watch the franchise program, the Housewives of, and then name city.
Right.
And she says she loves to watch it because, first of all, they're so outlandish and dramatic. And she likes to hone in and tap into the thought process that they're not talking about and the feelings that are actually being broadcast that, into the universe that, the television producers are not necessarily pointing out, because their job's not to point out how law of attraction is working. But that's something she loves to do, and that's what keeps her really sharp, is she uses real people, they're sort of real people, in an unscripted thing, sort of unscripted, and just play with it. Yeah, and I thought that was really cool. And for me, I have always used the news. Not that I listen to a lot of it, but when I do, because like before the show, you mentioned you have to set it up. The boys that were caught.
Oh, the boys in Thailand? Yeah, there's the boys football team, or soccer team as we call it here in the U.S., has been trapped in a cave network for the last more than 2 weeks now. And some rescuers found them deep underground about 10 days after they were lost. But there was no easy way to extract them. It's a very harrowing trip in to where they were. So they've been planning all this time trying to figure out how do they get them out and what's the safest way to do it. All kinds of ideas were being floated. Elon Musk has been coming up with some really interesting innovations, and they ended up so far they've got 8 of the 12 boys out. So there are 4 boys left plus their coach, plus some divers who provide them supplies and oxygen and things like that. And the oxygen is actually a pretty critical thing because the oxygen level in the cave had been getting low. I mean, we normally want 19 to 21% oxygen. Their oxygen was down to 15%, which is kind of like being on the top of Mount Everest. So it was pretty severe. And the good news is that 8 of the 12 are out. So I was looking at the whole thing from the point of view of, they're getting out. Yeah, they're getting out. And every time there's new news, hey, another boy got out. Yay. So that's the way I was enjoying it. I wasn't really trying to analyze how they got in there or how the law of attraction was affecting that. I was just celebrating the fact that an international team, and it's truly an international team. I mean, the Thais are obviously leading the way, but there are experts from the U.S., from Great Britain, from Australia, from China, from a number of other countries around the world, all basically collaborating and working with the Thais in every way that they can help to support the effort. It's been really quite the thing. I love that kind of cooperation. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So,
well, and to me, the first thing that comes to mind is many people in our global consciousness have desired for us to work together, country to country, to come together as a team and collaborate without fighting.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And this is a great example of it.
Yeah. So this is like, here's one positive result, other than the fact that the kids are being pulled out and they were found. And, I fully expect that the other 4 will be found or not found, but like released and brought out. But it's like nothing happens inside of a vacuum. Nothing happens just because. Everything occurs because of our thinking and what we're feeling and what we're broadcasting into the universe. And the law of attraction is continually responding. And I know sometimes that's a hard thing for some people to accept. But for those who can hear that, I'm just kind of throwing it out there as every situation that you see in your environment gives you something to stretch your own muscles to go, now what kind of thoughts or feelings could produce that result?
Yeah.
And to me, that's how you become really good at law of attraction.
Yeah. I mean,
because
a lot of what we do with the podcast too. Oh, sorry.
Pardon me?
I was just going to say, it's a lot of it has to do with what we do with the podcast. Here in the podcast, we spend a lot of time exploring all kinds of aspects of the law of attraction and how it's applied and, where people trip up and how they can get better at being deliberate creators and so forth. And we explore just about every angle you can find. So that fits in perfectly with the narrative of the podcast.
Mm-hmm. And I think there's one avenue is focusing on something from a positive perspective. But then there's also the post-manifestational aspect, which is now that something's already occurred, can you figure out how it occurred? Because especially in our own lives, when we get a result that we're not happy with, it really does a great service for us if we try to figure out, gosh, what was I thinking? What was I focusing on that caused this? And not to the point that it drives you insane, but if you can figure out, oh my gosh, I had this insidious little belief that's been running around for a really long time, and I don't even believe that, but it's been activated. Because that's kind of what me and Rhonda were doing over the weekend.
Oh, okay.
It's like she'd ask me questions, and I'd go, whoa, there's a stupid belief. Yeah, I know exactly when that one popped in. Let's see if I can wind this one up. So there was something that she asked me some questions. She said, so when was the first time this happened? And boom, my mom popped up. And she said, can you think of something? And went boom, and a memory showed up. And this was really fascinating. I have looked at all sorts of things from my childhood before, but this one, and it wasn't a big thing, but it had to do with I was holding people very accountable to their word. And when they broke their word with me, I felt like my trust with them was severed. And it was a very severe thing. And she said, okay, so is integrity a part of this? I said, oh yeah. I look at a person's character in terms of their integrity, and I have an expectation that when they say they're going to do X, Y, Z by such and such date, I expect that to be done by such and such date. Now they can renegotiate and said, hey, I'm running late. This is happening. Can I change the deadline? And I'm totally flexible and adaptive. But if somebody doesn't tell me that they're blowing off the date because they have their own agenda and don't tell me, that's a problem for me. And so she and I were looking at that. And one of the things that came up was I have this very absolute, rigid rule in my life, which I just explained to you. So I said, it really is not working for me because my own personal rigidity in this really makes me unhappy.
That's a good discovery.
Yeah, I mean, stuff happens. And just because, it's kind of like I expect everybody to play by my sense of integrity, my sense of my word is my bond, but the rest of the world doesn't all do that. And so I said, that's something I'd like to change. I'd like to have more flexibility. So one of the words that popped up was absolute. And I said, yeah, it's an absolute rule. Like it has to happen this way every time for me to be happy.
Oh, jeez.
So
yeah, that does sound
where
a
I
little stiff.
found, pardon me?
It does sound a little bit stiff.
Well, yeah, well, and it's not that I would have just gone looking for it, but something occurred in my life where somebody didn't communicate to me in a way that I felt was acceptable because it was like after the fact and they just blew past something and I didn't like it. So that's why I said, this didn't feel good. I want to go kind of digging around for, what's activating this that would cause me to feel this way. And so I landed on a story, a memory of, I was probably in junior high and my mom had given me this long list of chores to do because we had a big family gathering coming over that weekend. And I told her, sure, I'll do it. And it was like, that was something part of what I do for my allowance. And she was getting close to going to bed and she was really uncomfortable with the fact that I hadn't started the chore list yet. And I kept saying, don't worry, Mom, I'll do it. And she wanted me to stop playing or doing whatever I was doing and get to the chore list because it was making her feel uncomfortable. And I said, Mom, I promise by the time you wake up tomorrow morning, this chore list will be done. And that was hard for her to imagine because she's a go to bed early kind of person. So for her, it was like 7 o'clock at night. She was ready to kind of lay down and start falling asleep. Me, even as a kid, I was always a late night person. And she said, I can't believe that you're going to get this all done because it's a huge list. And I said, trust me, I'll do it. I said, I promise. And so I know my mom wakes up about 5 in the morning. And I finished the chore list at about 4 o'clock in the morning. And I went to bed. So when she woke up the next morning, I knew she would go and inspect everything that she had asked me to do. And it was all done to perfection. And then when I finally woke up and she met me to thank me for doing all this work, she said, I feel like I had little fairies just that must have been working during the night because you got it done and you got it done to perfection. And it just seemed not even doable to me. She said, first of all, the list seemed not doable with the time you had left to get it done. And the fact that I went to sleep and the next time I woke up, it was completed just felt unreal to me. And she was so excited. I mean, this was such a big deal to her that if you talk to her about it today, she would still say, oh my God, I totally remember that. Wendy is amazing. I don't know how she does this, but it's like I have little fairies cleaning the house while I sleep. So needless to say, this was a big, impactful moment or event. It was something that really said what my mother was saying to me was, Wendy, I trust you. Finally, because she had done this for years where she didn't believe I was going to get something done, but I'd always do it when she was asleep. This made such an impact that she gave me her undivided attention and trust, and she never mistrusted me again.
Wow.
I mean, to this day, she's never mistrusted me. When I say I'm going to do it, she believes it. And so as I was sharing this with Rhonda, what we both recognized, because as I was saying, I'm like, whoa, there's a lot of energy on this story.
Yeah.
There's a lot of impact. And I put a lot of meaning on when I gave my word, it was as good as done. And that is something I have lived by. That has been so impactful that I, like, truly, if I tell you I'm going to do something, I do. And if for some reason something's going to change, I communicate and renegotiate. But I don't leave things hanging. That's just not me. And so I had something in my life recently where somebody was kind of leaving me hanging and they weren't communicating in a way that felt appropriate to me. And so what was interesting is we looked at this situation from my childhood with my mom, and I said, well, there was a part of it that was really valuable to me. It has become, because I have become a person of my word. Okay, that's the good part. The part that wasn't the good part is I made it a generalized rule that I also had the expectation that I expect the whole world to live by that same idea, that when you give your word, it's as good as a signed contract. And I realized that that was where I was being very rigid.
Yeah, well, I can see that.
So that's the kind of scenario where, granted, I was because I trust my inner being and I trust that when a memory pops up out of the blue, it's because that memory is connected to whatever I'm dealing with. That to me is a place where I couldn't have done that level of excavation work years ago. But what I could do is just come up with a few thoughts here or there, and so like in this situation, I might have been able to say, well, I know I have a pretty hard and fast rule about commitments. And I know that I believe that somebody's word is as good as a written signature. And when somebody doesn't comply or doesn't follow through on their word, I get upset. So maybe I have some hard and fast rule in my life and I don't know where it came from. That might be as much as I could dig up, and I could still change the energy if I realize, yeah, I think I do have that hard and fast rule. In other words, I didn't have to have that memory to shift it. I could have just had, well, here's an idea. And so I don't know if you can tie this together, but that to me is why I like to get curious about all sorts of things that go on in our experience and try to look at what kinds of thoughts could possibly anchor a belief in place. And if it's not working for us, that's the kind of thing we want to go after and go, I wonder what that's about.
Well, to be honest, I'm not sure if I can actually tie it together, but by the same token, I'm not really sure it's mine to tie together. It's your story, it's your thing, so it would almost be presumptuous for me to do that. But the main thing is you found a method that works for you to basically do some slicing and dicing to get at what you really need to get at, and it produced fabulous results for you. So, good on you.
Well, thanks.
Yeah, really good.
I'll let that one go now.
Okay.
I think I said about all I want to say on the idea of suggesting that people just get really curious about how and why certain results show up in your life, your spouse's life, your friend's life, your co-worker's life, the people that you hear about on the news's life. It's like, I wonder how that happens, because nothing happens in a vacuum. Law of attraction is always responding to something.
Of course, before you can even get to the point where you're exploring that, you have to know what you want. And that's where we're at in the book. So we should probably go back to the main, the basic, starting point. What is it that we want? Because until you know that, you can't even begin to explore this stuff.
Okay.
So we're looking in The Law of Attraction, The Basics of the Teachings of Abraham by Esther and Jerry Hicks. We are in part 5, which is entitled Segment Intending. And the subtopic is, what is it that I now want? And it says, the reason that segment intending is so effective is because there are so many subjects you could consider. But when you try to do so all at the same time, you become overwhelmed and confused. The value of intending segment by segment is that as you focus more precisely on the fewer details of this moment, you allow the law of attraction to more powerfully respond, and you are less likely to confuse the issue further with your contradictory thoughts of doubt, worry, or an awareness of lack. And I mentioned before we started the podcast, I like that phrase. The value of intending segment by segment is that as you focus more precisely on the fewer details of this moment, the fewer details of this moment.
What does that mean, the fewer details of this moment?
I think what it means, this is what the way it resonated with me, is when I focus on just this segment, there just aren't as many things to distract my attention because I just have the one thing to focus on, what I'm planning to do next. And so presuming that I have at least some modicum of control over my own mind, I don't have to be thinking about, what happened yesterday or what I'm going to have for dinner or, what's going to happen next week or what's going on with this issue or what's going on with that issue. All I have to focus on is this one thing. And so you end up with fewer details overall to deal with. That's the way I interpret it. I don't know. Maybe it means something different to you.
I like that. That makes sense.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, that's why I liked it, because that's the thing that always struck me as the most difficult thing with law of attraction, which is trying to focus specifically and not be distracted and not, well, I don't know how else to say it, not be distracted. There's so many different ways we get distracted in life as we're trying to learn how to focus. So a segment as a way to focus, that starts to make more sense to me because they're just fewer things to distract me.
And so as we're talking about a segment, how would you define a segment?
It's the next piece of the day. It's the next thing you're going to do, the next event, the next activity, the next task, the next thing you're going to be engaged in your life. That to me is a segment.
So like after the podcast is over, like what would your next segment be?
Edit and publish it. So yeah, I mean, to take that example, I would take what we've recorded, because I mean there is a live recording going on, but I also need to do a little bit of editing because the final result has to be exactly 1 hour, so we can also play it on the PRN network. And so I have to go through and I clean out by taking some extra spaces out and so forth, and it just tightens it up a little bit. And once I get it down to 1 hour, then I send it to PRN, and I also publish it on the website because all the podcasts end up on the website. And I can't say I have to do a whole lot of segment intending for that because it's usually pretty easy and in terms of how I feel about it going in. But, on those rare occasions where I kind of need to give myself a boost, I'll just focus on, hey, this is going to be a great show by the time we're done. It was a great show already, but it's going to be even better because it's going to be nice and tight. And I just focus on that for a moment and then go do it. Okay,
so one segment would be publishing today's podcast.
Yeah, which is then probably...
The next segment may be talking or looking over the books, things that you didn't finish before the podcast.
Mm-hmm, yep.
The next segment could be having dinner with your wife.
And it's important to notice that...
I'm just trying to lay it out, as to like what is a segment.
No, it's a good point, yeah. And the thing that I find to be really important to understand about a segment is that segments are not of a particular length. I mean, usually the time that I spend to edit the podcast is 10 to 15 minutes. But the amount of time that I might spend on bringing the books up to date, that could be an hour or two. Or a segment could even be like, half of a day, depending on what it is I'm doing. So, I mean, they can vary in length.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, didn't mean to take a long break on there. Just wanted
That's all right.
To set the frame. Okay,
so, moving on, it says, for example, when your telephone rings, you might pick it up and say, good morning. And when you hear who it is, you say, hello there. Hold just a second, please. Did we just read this last time? Maybe we did. I'm not sure.
We did read this the other day.
All right. Well, that's okay. It's still good.
It's okay. Read it again. It's all good, and we always learn something new.
We do. Yep. So you say, hello there. Hold on just a second, please. And then you say to yourself, what is it that I most want to achieve in this conversation? I want to uplift the other person. I want to be understood. I want the other person to understand me. And I want the other to be positively influenced in the direction of my desire. I want the other to be stimulated and excited by my words. Indeed, I want this to be a successful conversation. And then when you come back on the line, you have pre-paved. And now that other one will respond to you much more in accordance with your desire than if you had not taken that time. So in other words, it's a way to influence the person at the other end of the line. Interesting. When another...
I was going to say, are we about to end the telephone part?
No, we got another 3 or 4 paragraphs, but go ahead.
Okay, well, I was going to say I had an interesting example of that today. I had somebody call, and I thought it was going to be a phone solicitor, and in a way it was. It was somebody from our local high school athletic department, and I guess they were wanting to sell ads, and they were calling local businesses to see if we wanted to like put an ad in their local paper or whatever their program, I guess.
Right.
And I said to him, I said, oh, well, you know what? I don't know that your program is really the best place for my marketing because I market to people that are more high end and more specialized. And so he said, well, like, what do you mean? And just for grins, what came out of my mouth is I said, I have programs, you know, that are at like $20,000, and I don't know that your band boosters is the right place for that. And there was this long pause, and he went, wow, yeah, you're probably right. And then he started naming some cities in the Dallas area that are quite affluent. He said, so you probably market to this place and this place. And I just kind of laughed. I said, that would be more appropriate. But I said, I pretty much like to market to the United States and Canada, the English speaking areas in our, you know, vicinity. And he went, wow, good for you. And there was like this long, like he didn't know what to do with what I said. And I really felt like somehow we had made this really lovely connection just in these few moments, you know. And I said, well, I really do hope that as you make, you know, more calls today, that you're able to connect with business owners where what you're selling is a great venue for them. And he said, thanks, and have a great day. And I said, you too. And we hung up. Well, the reason I bring this up is because that was the result of our call. But I have segment intended multiple times when it comes to people on the phone. I've done it mostly with vendors that I've had to call because I needed something from them because the bill was wrong or something like that. And I know I had a show where I told you this long escapade of, you know, how many months in a row I had to call this one vendor because things were wrong.
Oh, I remember that, yeah.
Just the undoing of me, because every single month I had this expectation that the bill would be wrong, and it was, and it would be like 2 hours on the phone with multiple people and no one could fix it, and went on for 18 months. But over time, the amount of time I was on the phone was less and less because, okay, I was hard-headed. It maybe took me 6 months of going through this before I went, hey, I'm creating this.
Yeah.
What in me is creating this? What am I vibrating to? What are my thoughts? And I started examining my thoughts, and oh my God, they were horrendous. They were horrible. They were like, nobody ever gets anything right. These people are all stupid. And, you know, my dad had this, like, this is a bill that I was handling for my mother because when my father passed away, I took over handling her bills. And I looked at his notes and I realized, oh my gosh, my father's been dealing with this month after month. This has been going on forever. So I started doing some segment intending. Now, I didn't call it segment intending, but this is what I did. When I knew I needed to call this vendor, I would say something like, okay, as I call this person, my intention is to stay calm. My intention is to breathe. I want this to go smoothly. I'd like to make positive progress. I want to remember that the person on the other end of the phone is doing their job and they're not out to get me and make me angry. Because if I choose to be angry, that's my choice. It's about my response. And I really want to have a much more positive response. Now, I don't think I said all of that the first time that things got better, but each time, every month that I made the call, I did take time before I got onto the call to set a new intention, to set a new desire. And I remember when I got to the point that I really realized that they were doing the best that they could, and they just didn't have a system that was cooperating for them. Well, that made me much friendlier, you know, and I said, and I remember thinking to myself, for however long this is going to go on, I just want this to be a pleasant experience. So when I get off the phone with them, for whatever length of time I'm talking to them, when I'm done, I can be done. And I can exit with a smile on my face.
Very good.
That started to happen. And then it actually started to become fun when the bill was still wrong. Because I'm like, I wonder what else I could create. Because each month it gets better and better.
Well, that's an interesting way to look at a bill that's still wrong, I have to say. I'm very positive, very, very forward-thinking, but quite interesting.
Well, when it finally got resolved, Walt, I almost didn't know what to do with
I'm
myself.
sure it took you had
Because I'm
like
like,
2 extra hours a day to deal with.
I know. I'm like, I guess I just delete the email that shows that the bill is correct. I'm like, wow, it's so anticlimactic. But kind of, I didn't do it purposefully, like, oh, now that I'm done with that, now I'm going to do it on this other stuff. But, we all have had experiences with phone solicitation. And because I work from my home, it's really disruptive while I'm working when I have somebody who's got this really strong energy that they're trying to sell me something. And so then I started to turn it into, you know what? I don't like it when, because I had a recognition that I didn't like how I felt after a solicitor called, because I always felt that their intrusion in my day, notice the words I'm using, their intrusion in my day created such a level of disruption that the real disruption was the fact that I felt I had to fight them off.
Oh, yeah.
The word fight.
Yep.
And I engaged them in short little quips, trying to get the best of them to try to get them to hang up first.
In other words, it was a
And
struggle.
if not, I'd hang up with them. Yeah, and it was a struggle. And I went, I don't like how this feels. Because when I'd hang up, I'd think to myself, well, if anybody here knows that I'm a life coach, would they consider hiring me after they heard this? And I'm like, I wouldn't hire me. I was quite rude. And I got into such a negative place. My responsiveness was horrible. So again, back to the idea of segment intending, I set a new frame. I set a new intention, which was that I really desired to find a way to interact with the person and be friendly. And at first I would just kind of like make light of what they were doing, or not make light, try to just ask questions, something that would stump them. But even when I was doing that, I'm like, well, that doesn't feel good to me either, because I feel like I'm just like I'm a cat and they're a mouse and I'm just batting them around. And I'm like, I'd really prefer that it's more of a win-win. Even if I don't want what they are offering, I would like the fact that they called me, I would like them to feel happier having made the call to me, even without getting the sale. So that was a new intention. And today's experience really was that, because I felt the moment that he locked on with me, like, wow, she's a really positive woman, and I like the way she's talking. And I really liked him too. And it's like we both wished each other well. And I was able to say no thank you in a way that I felt like I gave him a gift of a happy feeling in that moment.
So basically, you both got something good out of it, which kind of ties into the next part of what they were saying here in the book. They said when another person has initiated the telephone call, they know what they want, and so you must take a moment to identify what you want. Otherwise, by the power of their influence, they may achieve what they want, but you may not. And that's essentially what you did. You decided, well, I want to achieve what I want. And you did. Mm-hmm. And it was better for both of you as a result.
And so even though he didn't make a sale, he did make a happiness sale.
Which is, I mean, for anyone who has ever worked with anyone who does telephone sales, I mean, I've never actually done telephone sales directly, but I have worked with them. And that's really important. That's how they continue to fuel themselves to keep going, by having phone calls that feel good. It doesn't matter whether it actually leads to the sale. The good telemarketers, they know that. They just let the numbers work out the way that they do, because numbers always work out with that kind of thing. They just want to get through the phone calls and feel good wherever they can. And so you basically helped him get through that phone call and feel good. That was a victory for him.
Yeah, I had someone last week who said, that was the kindest hello I've ever heard. And he just couldn't get over how I said, hello, this is Wendy.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, wow, which told me he felt the energy behind my hello. And it's kind of like, in Jerry Maguire, where they say, you had me at hello. Yeah. I had him at hello.
Yeah.
Even though I said no thank you to what he offered.
Right.
And that really has been my intention, that there's no way I'm going to want every single item and buy every single thing that a solicitor calls me about. And I'm not going to stop them even from calling me, but I want to be able to still have a cheery disposition when it's done. And I would like to pass that on to them as well. And that is a segment intending. And because I've done that so many times, I don't have to set that, like, in what we just read or what you just read, Abraham was suggesting that you put them on hold while you set your intention, you set your segment for what you now desire. I've actually done that. And while this guy had called me today, while he was like ramping up his 20 seconds of script, I immediately went inside. Instead of putting on hold, I did it in the moment. And I said, what do I want from this? And it's like, I want to feel good when it's done. However that's achieved, I want to feel good.
It's a good goal. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's one we should probably do more often, actually. All of us, no matter what it is that we're dealing with, whether it's a caller or anything else. Because just the feeling good part is probably the most important part of all.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So continuing, we got three paragraphs left in this section. Let's finish them up. It says, if you want many things all at the same time, it adds confusion, tying back to what we talked about earlier. But when you focus upon the most important specifics of what you want in any particular moment, you bring about clarity, power, and speed. And that is the point of the segment intending process, to stop as you're entering a new segment and to identify what it is you most want so that you may give it your attention and therefore draw power unto it. Now, some of you are focused during some segments of your day's experience, but there are very few of you who are focused during very much of your day. And so, for most of you, an identification of segments and an intent to identify what is most important within those segments will put you in the position of being a deliberate magnetic attractor or creator in each of your segments throughout your day. And not only will you now find that you are more productive, but you will find that you are happier right out of your story. For as you are deliberately intending and then allowing and receiving, you will find great contentment. Finally, you are growth-seeking beings, and as you are moving forward, you are at your happiest, while when you have that feeling of stagnation, you are, not at your happiest. You found a way to be at your happiest in a telephone call. A solicitation call, actually.
Well, and honestly, when you feel good and you've helped someone else feel good, at least for me, that feeling lingers.
Oh, yeah.
It's not like the telephone call, I hang up and it's gone. It's like that feeling lingers. And likewise, what used to happen for me is because I would feel bad, that negative feeling lingered. And this is why contrast is such a beautiful, productive, expansive event in our lives. Because after having so many uncomfortable, unhappy, unfeeling good moments with phone calls to vendors and solicitors, each time I was not enjoying myself, I was shooting off a rocket of desire, which is a phrase Abraham uses. I was shooting off a rocket of desire into the universe saying, what I really prefer is to feel good. It just took me a long time, and that was my own choosing and my own doing, to finally recognize I don't like the way I feel, and I want to feel different.
Changed your alignment.
If I want to feel different, how can I do that? And just getting clarity around, look, I don't know the how, but I know I want to feel happy when I get off the phone. I don't want to feel like that person and I just beat each other up in a bloody verbal brawl. I want to feel like we were showing kindness to one another. And so those unpleasant experiences is actually what gave birth to the idea of me wanting to feel really good and have a win-win scenario. And so, I don't know, maybe people who don't naturally get as volatile as I did, maybe solicitors are no big deal for them. Or maybe they just handled them better than I did, but I did not handle them well.
Well, and certainly differently, perhaps. I mean, when I get a telephone solicitor, my first reaction is, next. Like, I just don't even give them the time of day. You give them not only the time of day, but you give them friendly greetings, and you try to intend this really happy experience. And even if they don't make a sale, you feel like you did some good because you helped them feel good. And my approach is completely different. Not that there's anything wrong with yours. Yours is a perfectly valid approach. Just mine is, nope, no thank you, next, goodbye.
Oh, so in other words, you don't give them the time to really get into their script. You've already hung up and you've already moved on?
Yeah, it's like, I mean, there are rare occasions where I am willing to talk to somebody just to see what they have to say. most often when I get a phone call like that, it's at a time when I'm on something else. I'm doing something, usually something work related, and I just don't have time for it. So I know most of them I'm not really going to be interested in anyway, so I'm not really worried about, geez, am I going to miss something? Is it going to be something really good? And it's like, no, that's not part of my thought process at all.
When you hang up, do you feel okay?
Yeah, I feel fine. I say thanks but no thanks, and I just go.
And that kind of non-attachment to hanging up on them was not my natural response.
Yeah, well, obviously it has to be something that works for you. That phrasing works for me because I just don't attach to it in any way. But you're right. If you do attach to it, you need a different way of doing it.
Well, and that kind of speaks to you and I are different people. We think differently. We have
really?
all sorts of different, we have all sorts of different filters, and that's why for me, I couldn't just have somebody call me up saying, "Hey, we're going to be doing window washing in your neighborhood," and go, "No, thank you," and hang up. For whatever reason, that just that's not okay to me.
Which makes your approach perfect. Because your approach works for you.
I'm not saying what you're doing is not okay. It's just even doing that made me feel bad.
Yeah, well, you certainly don't want that. That's for sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, I actually do know some of the reasons why from my personal history as to why that doesn't work for me, but I'm grateful for the fact that it didn't feel good, because that's what gave birth to creating something that now it's actually kind of fun. It's a little bit of a game. How can I positively influence another person that I don't know at all based on the few words that they're about to say to me?
And I'm even more abrupt with solicitation emails, often called spam. Most of the time, I just let my spam filter just throw them in the spam folder. Every once in a while, one gets through, and I'll briefly check it. Oh, spam, throw it in the spam folder. But every rare once in a while, something will come over me, like I'm having a good day or a bad day or an in-between day or something that's shifted me in some way, and I decide to look at it. I don't know why, but I do, and it happened today. And it was on a topic. As soon as I said, you'll kind of raise your eyebrows because you know how I really don't like the topic at all. It was on the topic of SEO.
I knew it.
Now, I have absolutely no need for SEO right now. In fact, I don't really, in my view, have ever any need of SEO. But nevertheless, there was the email, and there was something about the way he constructed it, I guess, that kind of caught my attention. Like, well, that was clever. I wonder where he's going to go with it. And so I investigated for about 3 minutes. That's about all I needed in order to figure out where he was going, because I know the subject so well. Now, this was something where he was trying to get me to listen to a 55-minute free video presentation. And I knew that wasn't going to happen. But I also figured, well, I'm pretty good at picking up the cues, so I'll spend like a minute or two and see what's really going on here. Interestingly enough, he sent me to what they call a splash page, where there's just the one thing you're going to pay attention to, and that's that video. And there was a comment section. One person had left a comment that said, well, I've been listening for 22 minutes, and I still don't know this thing that you're going to tell me about. So I figured, well, that wasn't a particularly good sign right there. But anyway, I listened for about a minute, and I realized what it was he was selling, and what he was selling was even worse than I thought it was. And so I just threw it away. But, I mean, that's a rare situation for me. Normally, I don't even give him that much time of day. So I don't know. I think what it really means is we have to be flexible to how we're feeling. At that particular point in time during today, I was feeling, let's just take a break and look at some spam for a minute.
Well, and maybe that's all it was, is it caught your curiosity, and it was just kind of like hey, I have a moment. Like other people might spend tons of time just flipping through their timelines on Facebook, and you did that.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. I'm not sure that I gained anything out of it, but at least I didn't get angry. That was good.
That was definitely good.
That was very good. Oh, yeah. It's always a goal for me. We have about 4.5, 5 minutes left, something like that. And I want to make sure I get this in, because I often forget to do this during the afternoon podcast. But if you're enjoying these episodes, and a lot of people do, I really want to urge you, if you are not yet a subscriber, to take a moment and subscribe to the podcast. It's really quick and easy to do. You go to the homepage at loatoday.net. All the instructions are right there. It literally takes about a minute. If you have an Android phone and you don't have some sort of podcast software, then it may take 2, because you have to download an app from the Play Store. But beyond that, I mean, it's really simple to do. And then once you do, you've got this whole stream of episodes that keep coming at your phone every single day for you to listen to. And our listeners love it. They prove it by listening to huge numbers of episodes every month. And they listen to the whole thing, Wendy. That's what gets me. I mean, the numbers show they're listening from beginning to end. So it's not like we're having people, for the most part, dropping off after the first 20 minutes. Most often, they're listening to the whole show. And I'm thinking, wow, this is great. So, yeah, I just want to urge people, if you're not yet a subscriber, just take a moment to subscribe. You're going to find that the Daily Dose of Happy, which does come twice daily, by the way, is really worth your time. It's unlike any other entertainment you have because our entertainment is positive. And with that thought in mind, I don't think we should really get on to the next section of the book because the next section is a little bit long. I'm not sure where to go with that one. We got a few minutes left. I don't know what to talk about for a few minutes.
Well, I'll tell you some follow-up from our Friday show.
Oh.
When you talked about how you would have the situation in the morning where you were cooking yourself breakfast.
Oh,
and
yeah.
you just decided to have a positive visualization.
Right.
And then within no time at all, one of the people you work with called and said, "Hey, it's done."
Blowing me away.
Been an issue. Yeah, it had been an issue or something where they had not been delaying and they weren't getting something accomplished.
It had gone on for like a week or so.
Yeah, and so what I found really fascinating is I kind of interviewed you and asked you a whole bunch of questions because I wanted to dial in and find out what specific components were a part of that creation. And basically what I surmised was you didn't drag any of the negative thinking that you had previous on that subject into your visualization. Well, that got me really curious. I mean, I spent the whole weekend thinking on that.
Really? Wow.
Like, wow. I think this is like the answer to one of my giant questions.
No kidding.
Which is, about how to create quickly. And and here's one of the beliefs that I had that I didn't know I had until I started investigating. And it was that if you have negative beliefs on the trail, they have to be cleared before the manifestation will show up. And your situation proved that wrong.
Oh, because I had woken up and I didn't have any of the pre-existing stuff hanging over me. I'd kind of forgotten about it.
You just didn't carry it into your visualization of that moment.
Yeah.
And so what I'm now labeling that is you had a moment of pure positive energy focused upon that which you desired.
Yeah, it was very clear, very high level of clarity.
I'm now concluding, until it's proven wrong, this is how I do my scientific method.
Okay, that works.
I'm now concluding that if you have a pure positive thought or focus on anything, you should have really fast manifestation.
Yeah.
Because that's what Abraham has been saying for years that I don't think I quite caught.
Well, that's kind of what they were saying in the section we just read. I mean, that one sentence that I pulled out, the value of intending segment by segment is that as you focus more precisely on the fewer details of this moment, you allow the law of attraction to more powerfully respond. The fewer details of this moment. There were very few details in that moment.
Yeah, and if you look on the next page, Walt, at the top, it talked about how when you do this, it says you bring about clarity, power, and speed.
Yes, that's right.
And I was looking at the word speed going, oh my God, that was what blew me away about your experience.
Yeah.
You had such incredible speed. I was really blown away. And so what it has caused me to do is to really think about how I have spent so much of my even deliberateness in wanting to create, trying to figure out how to, assert as much positive focus as I can, all the while waiting for basically the shoe to drop to show me, there's this resistance on the trail. And I take care of it, clean it up, and keep moving. But I don't think I realized the simplicity of pure positive focus. And so we'll leave that there for the end of the show. But I think I'd like to talk more about what is it like to just have pure positive focus.
Well, there you go, folks. Now you have a reason to come back. We hope that you tune in next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye for now.